When naval historians evaluate the collapse of the Imperial Japanese Empire during the Second World War, public memory automatically gravitates toward the massive carrier fleet engagements at Midway and the Philippine Sea, the bloody amphibious landings across Coral Atoll, or the atomic detonations over Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Yet, the true strategic throat cut of Japan's war machine occurred deep beneath the surface of the ocean, driven by a steel weapon engineered not for glorious line-of-battle surface actions, but for relentless industrial-scale attrition. That weapon was the Gato-class submarine. Japan was an island nation whose entire industrial survival, economic capacity, and military projection rested upon imported raw materials to feed its factories, power its war fleet, and maintain mobile armies across millions of square miles of occupied Asian territory. Tokyo required millions of tons of crude oil, natural rubber, bauxite, iron ore, and food transported continuously across open sea lines of communication. The Naval High Command in Tokyo assumed these vital ocean highways were secure. They relied on vast geographical distances and a dogmatic belief that American naval strategy would focus exclusively on grand fleet surface battles between battleships and aircraft carriers. They miscalculated catastrophically. The United States Navy unleashed an unrestricted campaign of commerce raiding, and the architectural centerpiece of this total maritime strangulation was the Gato class. Designed in the late 1930s as the ultimate ocean-going fleet submarine, the Gato class was a brilliant engineering response to a massive geographical challenge. The Pacific Ocean was a vast, unforgiving theater where bases were separated by thousands of nautical miles. Unlike German U-boats operating in the relatively compact naval corridors of the North Atlantic, an American submarine departing from Pearl Harbor or Brisbane needed the operational range to travel 5,000 miles just to reach its patrol zone, spend weeks actively hunting targets, and still retain enough fuel to complete the long journey back to port. To achieve this extraordinary endurance, American naval architects crafted a warship that was 311 feet long with a beam of over 27 feet, displacing over 1,500 tons on the surface. It was vastly larger than contemporary European submarines, deliberately built around the core principles of long-range autonomy, mechanical reliability, heavy weaponry, and structural resilience. The central nervous system of its engineering achievement rested in its propulsion architecture, a sophisticated diesel-electric drive mechanism, powered by 4 heavy-duty, multi-cylinder diesel engines driving high-output electric generators, which in turn powered high-torque electrical propulsion motors. The Gato class could achieve surface speeds exceeding 20 knots. This high surface mobility was vital to its tactical doctrine. It allowed the submarine to outpace heavy merchant shipping, reposition rapidly ahead of zigzagging convoys, and keep pace with fast-moving fleet task forces across changing ocean battlefields below the waterline. The internal layout of the hull was a masterclass in spatial efficiency and mechanical density. Deep within the steel belly lay massive banks of heavy lead-acid storage batteries that provided silent power for underwater maneuvering, while submerged speed was limited to roughly 8 to 9 knots for short operational bursts. The fundamental design prioritized long underwater endurance at low economic crawling speeds. Architects paid meticulous attention to the precise distribution of internal weight, fuel oil storage tanks, ballast tanks, and reserve buoyancy, enabling the massive 1,502 vessel to execute a dive beneath the waves in less than 40 seconds, a crucial, life-saving defensive capability when under surprise attack from patrol aircraft or enemy escorts. The structural frame of the Gato was constructed around a heavy-pressure hull made of riveted, high-tensile steel plates, officially rated to a conservative test depth of 300 feet. The structural integrity of the design proved far tougher in real-world combat than on paper blueprints. Under severe depth-charge attacks by Japanese destroyers, American captains routinely pushed these vessels well beyond their theoretical limits, plunging to depths of nearly 400 feet or more to slip beneath crushing explosive shockwaves. The resilient steel hull flexed, groaned, and absorbed immense hydraulic shock, but held its structural integrity where lesser ships would have imploded under the sheer weight of the ocean. Beyond pure mechanical horsepower and steel thickness, the human architecture inside the Gato class represented a radical paradigm shift in submarine design philosophy. Prior to World War II, submarine service across every major navy was defined by horrifying living conditions, sweltering heat, stifling air, toxic fumes, diesel oil coating every surface, severe freshwater rationing, and rampant disease. American engineers recognized that a crew crippled by physical exhaustion and heat stroke could not operate complex mechanical systems effectively or maintain sharp, tactical focus during grueling 75-day combat patrols through the oppressive timidity of the tropical South Pacific. Consequently, the Gato class became the first production submarines in naval history to incorporate heavy-duty, high-capacity air conditioning and water distillation systems into their foundational blueprints. By constantly controlling ambient internal temperatures and stripping out airborne moisture, the air conditioning units protected sensitive electronic circuits from corrosive condensation, while keeping the 80-man crew healthy, alert, and capable of operating at peak efficiency under extreme stress. High-capacity freshwater distillers converted raw seawater into pure drinking water and battery coolant, allowing for unprecedented operational longevity without returning to port for basic provisions. Furthermore, the internal layout provided improved berthing spaces, expanded cold storage lockers for fresh food, and an upgraded galley capable of serving hot, high-calorie meals throughout long deployments. This intense focus on habitability was not an engineering luxury. It was a military force multiplier. It ensured that after weeks of searching vast stretches of open water, when the critical moment of attack arrived, the crew was physically ready to execute complex operational commands without delay or cognitive fatigue. The ship's physical construction also took into account the immense logistics of maintenance far from primary industrial bases. The engines, piping, and electrical systems were laid out with modular accessibility in mind, allowing the crew to perform deep mechanical repairs while underway at sea or at forward tender ships stationed in remote Pacific lagoons. This self-sufficiency turned each Gato-class submarine into an autonomous gunner platform by marrying a long-range hull profile with advanced diesel-electric machinery, high structural tolerance, revolutionary air conditioning, and crew-sustaining habitability. The architects of the Gato class produced a warship capable of operating independently across the vast blue wilderness of the Pacific. It was a self-contained combat platform engineered specifically for long-distance economic warfare, prepared to operate for months at a time while seeking out and severing the vital maritime arteries, feeding the industrial heart of the Japanese Empire. While the structural design and life support architecture gave the Gato class its extraordinary operational reach, its offensive weapons systems transformed it into the most lethal platform for economic warfare in naval history. The primary offensive capability of the Gato class resided in its heavy torpedo arrangement. 6 21-inch torpedo tubes mounted in the bow and 4 in the stern, carrying a total payload of 24 Mark 14 torpedoes, or a modular combination of torpedoes and magnetic sea mines. This Tentaboo configuration provided captains with unmatched tactical flexibility. A Gato-class submarine could initiate an attack against a merchant convoy with a dense 6-torpedo fan from its bow, maneuver rapidly through the chaotic escort screen, and unleash 4 additional torpedoes from its stern tubes as it disengaged into the deep ocean. However, early in the Pacific War, this formidable hardware was severely undermined by an infamous ordnance scandal. The primary weapon, the Mark 14 torpedo, suffered from 3 distinct engineering defects. It ran several feet deeper than programmed. Its magnetic exploder detonated prematurely, and its mechanical contact fuse failed to detonate on direct 90-degree impacts. For the first 18 months of the war, Gato captains repeatedly risked their ships executing flawless tactical approaches, only to hear their torpedoes strike target hulls with a harmless thud or explode uselessly in the ocean wake. Once frontline officers and persistent submarine commanders forced the Bureau of Ordnance to fix these mechanical flaws, the true destructive power of the Gato architecture was released. The turning point came with the integration of cutting-edge electronic architecture directly into the submarine's operational control center. The installation of advanced surface search and air search radar systems, notably the SJ and SD radar sets, fundamentally revolutionized submarine warfare tactics in the Pacific. Previous submarine doctrines across the world viewed the submarine as a submerged ambush craft, reliant almost entirely on visual periscope views. The Gato class, guided by microwave radar, became a deadly surface hunter. Captains could track enemy convoys through pitch-black nights, tropical downpours, and dense sea fogs from miles away, well beyond the visual detection range of Japanese lookouts. Radar telemetry fed continuously into the torpedo data computer, a pioneering electromechanical analog computer capable of tracking target speed, range, and deflection course in real time to calculate precise firing vectors automatically. This seamless fusion of radar tracking, real-time analog computing, and 10-tube volley firepower turned the Gato class into a terrifyingly efficient instrument of destruction. The strategic campaign waged by these submarines targeted the connective tissue of the Japanese war machine, its merchant shipping fleet, known collectively as the Maru ships. Day after day, patrol after patrol, Gakla submarines stalked the vital shipping corridors, connecting the home islands of Japan to the rich oil fields of Borneo, the rubber plantations of Malaya, and the raw resource centers of the East Indies. Japanese anti-submarine warfare doctrine was hopelessly inadequate, relying on outdated depth charge patterns, poor inter-service cooperation between the Army and Navy, and a failure to organize unified convoy escorts until far too late in the conflict. American submarine commanders exploited these structural vulnerabilities with ruthless efficiency. Gato-class submarines surfaced at night inside convoy columns, slipped past unsuspecting escort screens, sank vital oil tankers, cargo freighters, and troop transports, and vanished back into the oceanic expanse before effective counterattacks could be organized. When Japanese escorts managed to drop depth charges, the rugged design of the Gato enabled it to endure intense depth charge bombardments, riding out heavy explosions, allowing crews to repair internal leaks under pressure, and returning to combat readiness within hours. As the war progressed, the tactical operational style evolved into cooperative hunting tactics similar to Wolfpack, but adapted to American radar superiorities. Groups of 2 or 3 Gato and Bala-class submarines coordinated their movements via high-frequency radio networks, driving merchant escorts into confusion and systematically wiping out entire convoys in single-night actions. The historical numbers illustrate a catastrophic collapse of an empire's economic infrastructure. Over the course of World War II, American submarines dominated in numbers and operational sorties by the Gato class and its close structural successor. The Balao Classic counted for over 55% of all Japanese merchant ship tonnage destroyed during the war. They sank over 1,300 merchant vessels and dozens of major imperial warships, including heavy fleet aircraft carriers, battleships, cruisers, and fleet destroyers. The destruction went far beyond the numbers on balance sheets. It fractured the operational ability of the Imperial Japanese Armed Forces to wage coherent war. Without crude oil, high-octane aviation gasoline could not be refined to train replacement pilots, leading directly to the air combat disasters that crippled Japan's remaining carrier air wings. Without raw steel and iron ore, naval shipyards could not replace the losses of front-line combat vessels or build escort vessels quickly enough to defend what remained of their supply chains. By 1944, the economic consequences of this submarine blockade were total and absolute. The supply of crude oil from the South Pacific to Japan was virtually cut off, grounding air squadrons and leaving the surviving surface fleet of the Imperial Japanese Navy immobilized at anchor without fuel. Japanese industrial plants sat idle for lack of imported coal and raw iron. Domestic agricultural distribution collapsed, and isolated garrison forces scattered across dozens of Pacific islands were left to starve without medical supplies, food, or ammunition reinforcements. The Gato class did not achieve victory through dramatic single-day battles or famous carrier duels. It won through a relentless industrial campaign of maritime strangulation. The architectural design of the Gato-class warship, built with long-range hulls, reliable diesel-electric engines, crew-centered air conditioning, integrated radar computing, and immense torpedo fire power created an unstoppable weapon of economic ruin. In the end, It was this engineering triumph beneath the surface of the Pacific that systematically starved an empire of its lifeblood and guaranteed the complete collapse of its war machine.